Attention Albatross here again with the Cypher Unlimited crew. We have our usual suspects of AD or Alpha Dean or simply Dean. We have Spigs18 or Anthony. And Dean, what are we doing here today?
Well, today we're going to talk about another topic that was given to us by one of our Cypher Unlimited family. Yeah, that's what they are, family. And the question that was posed was, is it enough to just tell a good game or tell a good story? And so today, as our title so illustrious puts it, we're going to break down game balance in Cypher System. Anthony?
Before we do that, you didn't mention who it was that gave us the topic.
Oh my goodness, it was Josh. Count zero.
All right.
Sorry about that, buddy.
Yeah, for the purpose of discussing, game balance is kind of a broad discussion, and I think just for the purpose of this discussion, we had to, dig a little deeper in depth into the actual topic. So we broke it down into 3 different categories. And the categories we came up with was game design balance, like the game itself, how is it balanced, from beginning to end, how important that balance is to the overall design. Character creation balance, that's pretty straightforward, is when you're building your characters, are all the characters equally balanced? Do they all, unique in their own ways? And last but not least, the last category is narrative balance. And we're going to compare and see how Cypher System stacks up to the 3 definitions that we have for each one of these categories. So the first category that we're going to tackle is game design balance. And I'll let Al read us the definition and where we got it from.
All right, so again, we're starting with game design balance, and we found this definition on Wikipedia under game balance. And it states, game design balance is the concept and the practice of tuning a game's rules, usually with the goal of preventing any of its component systems from being ineffective or otherwise undesirable when compared to their peers. An unbalanced system represents wasted development resources at the very least, and at worst can undermine the game's entire rule set by making important roles or tasks impossible to perform. Pretty straightforward definition, and yeah, let's jump right into it, guys. How balanced do you think the game design and Cypher System is?
Well, overall, I think it's pretty balanced throughout. There might be a couple of areas that could use some tweakings, as you've heard some of our other members and other people complain about, certain aspects. But I mean, as a whole, I think the game is balanced because it kind of pushes you in the direction of the philosophy of the game, which is we're going to give this to you in broad strokes, and you as the game master will fill in the blanks, plug and play. So overall, for me, it's not a problem, I guess, because I've been playing for so long. It works. What do you think, Ant?
I think for the most part, in the design aspect, it's pretty well balanced. I think you might see some difficulties in the next section that we'll discuss, but because there's so little rules and so little NPC interactions, it's so modular and so easily to set a difficulty number that you don't have as much balance issues when there isn't that many mechanics involved in the first place, like with other systems. Cypher System has very few NPC mechanics that you have to worry about, so there's less balance issues in the design process, if that makes any sense.
No, that definitely makes sense. And that was kind of going to be my point too, is that due to the modular and straightforward nature, and also like the looseness of the rules, right, like how easily it is to just assign a target number, it makes it, the balance is like, just through the game design itself, the balance is there inherently, if that makes sense. Like, because no matter what, like the way I've seen a lot of people approach like like D&D per se. Like they'll talk about a monster or something, and the monster will have stats from the book, and they'll say the monster has this much HP and its challenge rating is this or whatever have you. Whereas with Cypher System, a lot of the stuff, I mean, some people do use the book in that manner. They'll use it word for word. But a lot of people I've seen will just make up the NPC on the spot or the challenge rating or whatever you want to call it. What is it in Cypher System? The difficulty number, the target number. You make that up on the fly, and that kind of, you can account for players' like abilities, inabilities, all that stuff. You can account for it on the fly just by assigning one or another target number, and it's just elegant.
To play devil's advocate to that statement, right? Some people would say that's unbalanced because when you depend on individuals to dictate how NPCs interact with the players, and everyone has a different idea what that interaction is, then it's not balanced across the board for every game. You know, because Dean and I may have different perspectives on what we think a giant mole monster would be.
We would. But again, I think that's where the balance of Cypher System, because I think it's the approach, it's the mindset. It's my paradigm shift that I talk about all the time. Yes, you and I probably will have different ideas on what that creature is going to be. But being experienced GMs and being the people that we are trying to tell a great story, and I think that's where all those things come into play with Cypher System, it's still going to work out because I might be looking at it from and I'm just saying it's arbitrarily, but, I could be looking at this whole situation from a combat perspective, and that's going to be the major element of my story is this combat with the mole monster, where your thought process might be there may have to be some sort of interaction. They may need to use some sort of empathy or emotional aspect. So that's going to be the thrust of yours. So it's going to be two different approaches, but they're still going to balance out because they're going to still achieve or attempt to achieve the same, element or our element that we're looking to do. And I think that's what makes Cypher System work. Like Al said, it's elegant. It's not locked in into a set of perceived ideas. And I think that's where the balance for Cypher System really shines through.
How important do you think design balance is in Cypher System?
I think that was probably something Monty did on purpose. I think it was very important because if you look at go into the GM section of the Cypher System rulebook or Numenera or any of them, and look at the advice that's given. Look at how they tell you to approach all of the aspects of things that go on in Cypher System. They were trying to groom you to have that, my favorite term, my paradigm shift. They were grooming you for that. They're pushing your thought process in a different way, And to me, what I say is it's like a more creative way, as opposed to being dependent on statistics, on a set of predetermined ideals, and now you're being free to tell your story. So I think the design balance inside, I think it was very important. I think that was the aspect they were looking for. I could be wrong, but that's what I got out of it.
I mean, the way I look at it is that when a lot of people, this is preconceived notion from other systems that I've seen other players come into games talking about, whatever have you. I'm not going to name certain games, but whatever have you. A lot of people dive into these games expecting there to be like full-on combat every, session. It's going to be like the majority of the session, maybe with like 10 minutes of role-playing in between each combat or something like that. So a lot of people gear their characters towards these, combat, and again, not really in Cypher System too much. But in Cypher System, a player can build a combat-oriented character. A player could build a socially, like what is it? Like the bard or whatever have you, like the social character, and the GM can design encounters that fit both of them very well off the fly. Like you don't really need to rely too heavy on the book for what you call it, figuring out like how the characters can use their or I'm trying I'm writing this really horribly.
You
Um,
got it. You got it, Bell. You got
but
it.
it's just that it's so easy to input into maybe even a combat scene, some role play or vice versa, that you can include everybody's like prowess into a scene without really worrying or breaking balance in any way.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Um, I kind of look at this a little differently than the both of you. I would guess it's a little twofold. I think that if we look at genre specific Monte Cook games, right, like Numenera, The Strange, I think design balance was a lot more important and a lot more. They actually visualized how to make this system balanced throughout. But I think with the Cypher system, I don't necessarily think it was as important, because when you have when you concentrating on one genre or one setting, it's a lot it's a lot more important within, that one setting, that everything operates, smooth and on the same level, right? But when you're building a multi-genre system like the Cypher system is, right, you have to give up some of that balance control in order to fit every genre in. So I don't necessarily think that the Cypher system core itself, that balance is a key component in that core book. But I definitely think it was more thought out in Numenera, The Strange, Gods of the Fall, the individual settings. I don't know if I'm making much sense, but the individual settings, I think that the balance was a little more thought out and a little more pre-planned as opposed to in the Cypher core.
Okay, and I get what you're saying, and it makes sense. But I think what I was saying earlier was the fact that that was the piece. That's why it's modular. That's why you have plug and play. That's why there's specific mechanics in those designs. Like when you're talking about the multi-genre, for example, look at Supers. He gave us power shifts. He gave us a mechanic that was design specific for superheroes, where we've broken the mold and decided we could use them over here or use them over here for whatever reason. Those design aspects, those balancing acts were there. And I think all the genres, especially with the little modular pieces you could plug and play with. Um, but in the same breath, I get what you're saying, because in a full book, there's, a full on setting. There's lore, and there's what do you call it? There's people, places, and things. The lore, the land, the history, all of that set the stage and dig into the mechanical balances. Whereas, the more free form systems just give you pieces and parts to plug in.
Yeah, and I think pieces and parts, like you guys keep on saying modular, but I don't think necessarily modular improves balance. I think if anything, modular hinders balance. The least amount of rules, like the less rules you have, the more GM fiat you have, the less overall balance you have in a game. Because once you're dealing with multiple interpretations from different individuals, then balance is unwhacked. I think most people will argue the more balanced systems are the ones that do have concrete rule sets, and like a specific guideline. If we're going by the definition of what balance is, you know what I mean? So it's not necessary. And I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. I'm just saying that when they concentrated on Numenera, there was a little more rule and a little more thought process in when you're running a game. This is a specific way you got to do it. But when you look at the Cypher core, they're giving you a whole genre in 4 or 5 pages. So they're giving you just a little bit.
They're giving you broad strokes.
And it's open to GM fiat. And when you open it up to GM fiat, you open it up to unbalancing.
And
That's what I'm
no,
saying.
it definitely makes sense because in that regards, yes, there might be some inconsistencies from table to table. Like in like just going back to the example YouTube provided, where the giant mole monster or whatever, you might approach it two different ways. There might be different skill checks or whatever involved. There might be rolling with different assets or whatever have you, and you know what you call it. It's I think that's you kind of come into Cypher System not expecting that, but knowing that. I mean, not knowing it, but like if you read the rules, it's spelled out for you. It's like this is a guideline. Like this is not a set in stone thing. You use what works for you. So if you read the book, and even as a player who's maybe playing a game with like no, excuse me, in different games with multiple GMs, you should already come into these games expecting it to be different from how another GM might be running it. Especially if you're coming from a game like D&D or whatever Pathfinder, where it's very crunchy, very spelled out for you. All those games, again, I'm not trying to shit on it or anything, but if you're running a module or something like that, I feel like a lot of those games could be almost cookie cutter if the GM isn't super creative. Whereas with Cypher System modules, the same exact module, even with GMs who aren't like the best at it, it like encourages that creative freedom to like interject your own ideas and stuff into it. And again, you come into this Cypher System kind of expecting that kind of, if you call it imbalance, but I call it GM flavor. Like how the GM has a style of play within the Cypher System itself.
I mean, for the record, you both know I'm not a fan.
Oh no, I
of
know.
balance, period.
I know.
But I'm just stating
Devil's
what,
advocate.
yeah, the devil's advocate of what people would perceive, in like the imbalances, because we hear that a lot on the server.
We do, and
when they say, and it's a legitimate point that has to be recognized and acknowledged.
Well, again, for me, it is a legitimate point, but it's a moot point when it comes to Cypher System. People have got to shift their thought process. That's really what it boils down to. The game design of Cypher, I think the biggest import of the game design and the balance that it brought to it was shifting the mindset of how you sit down at that table. Cypher System doesn't even encourage you, it actually encourages you to have an open table. Put a map on the table. Don't put a screen up. This is a us thing. This is where and I think that's where the balance of it comes in, because it's supposed to be you and your players, as opposed to you, the GM, in control of the world. And that's just my 2 cents on it.
I mean, I think there's a valid point. I mean, I view Cypher System the same as you, Dean. But I do think that other people's opinions of wanting a more like consistency across the board is a legitimate gripe. If that's the style of game.
I mean,
yeah,
I agree. I mean, what that's what our last question is are there any aspects of game design you think aren't well balanced? And yeah, for me, I'd probably say it's those other little nuancy things that aren't there that probably would be, as an example, probably for like a superhero game. One thing in superhero games, characters lift, you got Superman and the Incredible Hulk, and the Incredible Hulk should be able to lift, they say 90 tons when he's not mad. That's just his baseline strength. So what level of difficulty is that? Give me a chart with the levels of difficulties of, what those things are. Give me a chart with, what level adamantium is versus osmium steel versus titanium, all those little things. So I don't think those balances are there, because that leaves it up to interpretation of every GM. And every GM is going to see those things differently. But it would have been nice if there was a baseline that they threw in there for things like that. So that's an aspect of game design I don't think is well balanced. There should be charts. There should be more charts.
Al?
For me, and it's something that gets brought up on the server a lot. Is exp distribution, not distribution, but exp expenditure by the players more specifically, in advancement versus in-game bonuses like long-term, short-term rerolls, etc. So a lot of people, again, they have to kind of homebrew their own way to try to keep leveling balance or to keep players from hoarding their exp specifically for advancing. And again, I feel like there should have been a little more, I don't know what's the phrasing here, because again, because how Cypher System is, it really honestly doesn't matter if one character is tier 1 and one character is tier 3. It doesn't really make a huge difference from a GM and like from that perspective, right? But if you're a player at the table, right, and you're there at tier 1 using your exp for fun things like rerolls or like adding character intrusions or player intrusions or whatever have you, and then you have Mr. McHords in the corner over there hoarding all their exp specifically for advancements, and they're already tier 3, it kind of creates this like disparity or like horde, not horde mentality, herd mentality, whereas they try to do the same thing as them, like, hey, I'm falling behind, I need to save my exp to catch up to them. Whereas again, it doesn't matter as too much really from a GM side, but the player might feel some kind of ways being under leveled. You know what I mean? So
I mean, I was just going to agree with you. I was going to say, I think that's a perfect example of a mechanic that isn't fully balanced. Mm-hmm. Because what you just said is, I know as a GM it doesn't matter, but as a player, that is a perceived balancing issue. Me personally, like we've always had this discussion, me personally, I don't want to take away the agency of the players, let them decide what they want to spend the XP on. But I'm willing to admit that it does create a balancing issue, because if the fun and enjoyment is not balanced throughout, if you have one person that's saying, hey, it's unfair, I'm spending my XP for the adventure, for the narrative, for rerolls, for player intrusions, and this guy's just leveling up his character, and it's creating a space between the levels, and it's creating a tension between the two actual players, then it is a balancing issue.
Right. No, and I agree. I mean, we've said this 1,000 times. You and I both agree. I've never been one to want to tell people, okay, this is in-game XP and this is advancement XP. I've never wanted to do that. I've tried my best to steer away from it, but at the end of the day, you know what? I've seen how well it worked when playing with other people. Like, we've got people on the server who actually, like, when they do a GM intrusion, they don't give 2 XP to the person. They give the person an XP, and then they have a XP pool for the whole group. So that extra XP goes into the player pool, and then the whole group decides, you can use that for a reroll. You can use that, so you don't have to even worry about somebody giving an extra XP. So it's things like that I've seen, and they work well. And but I do agree. I like the fact that it's resource management, and it should be up to the players.
Yeah, but then again, I'm not a fan of balance, so I'm gonna steer towards the unbalanced method. Because even though when we had Eric Frankhouse on, he was very adamant, and very he stood strong on the opinion that there should be XP for advancement and there should be XP for rerolls. I don't think it makes much of a difference in one shots, but in campaigns, I even though he's right, I'll never admit it to his face, but he's right.
But you just did.
And
no, it's not here.
It definitely it does make a huge difference, because again, we're one shot guys. That's basically like 99.9% of my experience with Cypher System is one shots. But now that I'm running my home group, it's a consistent group. They keep track of their EXP and all that. Early on, like I tried it out, like with the spending of EXP for advancement, and then I realized that again, one of the players was holding on to it a little more. Like the EXP is like, oh, I'm gonna wait, I'm gonna save this so I can get that advancement. And while other players was like, hey, I want to do this player intrusion where like I have history with this guy, or like they're being cool with it. And I was like, that's not it. Again, it was creating that dynamic at the table I didn't really want to see, so I immediately shifted over to what's referred to as commonly on our server as milestone advancements, where they'll do something like there'll be a milestone in the story and they all get one advancement. They choose whichever one, and that keeps things even. And then the EXP they earn via GMIs or whatever have you, that's what they use for the in-game purchases, the rerolls, the player intrusions, etc. And that, again, that's not how it's written in Raw. And again, this goes to speak to what Anthony's saying with that consistency between tables, because other GMs might not run the EXP for advancements like I do. It's just what I found to work well for my table.
And there's no right or wrong way of doing it, but that's very interesting, because I think I would have never tried like milestone advancement in Cypher, even though I think it works well on D20 based games. But yeah, that's very interesting. I don't think I've ever would have tried that.
Yeah, well, like I said, my thought process, for same thing like what I was talking about, I had the idea to use character arcs, and every time you completed a portion of your character arc, you could, get yourself an advancement. Things like that, the milestone works, or, again, I love the mechanic. I love the XP mechanic, that it can be spent for more than just player advancement. But now sometimes I wish, that the in-game stuff may have been given a different name, just like, in Savage Worlds, they have bennies or whatever, that you would have given it another name, because for, like I said, a full-on campaign, it can become problematic. Like you said, Anthony, you see that schism between your players, because you got Mr. Tier 3 with all the extra tools, the extra things in his toolkit, and then you got the 3 Tier 1 characters, they may have, picked up some long-term benefits or something like that with their XP,
or just spent them on rerolls.
But they just spent them on either rerolls or player intrusions to advance the story. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think final thoughts on game design balance. I'm gonna hold fast to I think that the genre and setting specific versions of Monaco games are more balanced than the Cypher core is, but I don't need that balance in my game personally. So I love the Cypher core, and I think that I can balance it out myself where need be. So I mean that's my opinion, but I do think that Cypher core isn't as balanced as Numenera, The Strange, Gods of the Four, any of the genre specific settings.
And I gotta agree with you, and like I said, though, I think the Cypher core book is by design like that, on purpose, to try to encourage more of more creativity on the side of the GMs, and more I would say not even customization, but more control of your game world. I think with Numenera, The Strange, and Gods of the Fall, and Stay Alive, and all those books, I think what those books are, those are like your training manuals to prepare you to be in the Cypher System rulebook. So me too, personally, the Cypher System core book is absolutely my favorite. I'm always getting an idea for something, and love it as is.
So I agree with both of y'all, and that you just have to come into Cypher System with that certain mindset that, not as the GM, because the GM will read the book. You as a GM have that creative flexibility to know that it's modular, that you're going to have to kind of fix balancing a little bit yourself when it comes to certain rulings or whatever have you. But coming into it as a player, and only as a player, you have to read the book and kind of absorb that philosophy that, hey, one GM might run the rule set this way, another GM might run the rule set another way, and that's okay. You don't need that consistency between games. I mean, because there is going to be some consistency because the rules do have a base. But certain different minor things here or there might be played or ruled differently, and that's okay as long as they're consistent within the game itself. As long as that GM isn't on the fly changing how they're ruling what they're doing, then that's a mess. But as long as they're consistent within that game, you have to keep the mindset as long as, again, consistency within the game and that everybody's having fun with how it's being run. Because if, let's say, a GM is interpreting a rule one way and every single player at the table is like, whoa, 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 wait a second. You're not, like, that's not cool. Like, we should probably do it this way. And the GM is very vehement and like, no, we're going to do it this way. That's another issue in and of itself. But again, if you as the player come with that open mind philosophy that, yeah, it might be a little bit different from table to table, but that's not inherently a bad thing because you will get a different perspective and a different experience. And again, as long as everyone's having fun at the end of the day, that's really what matters.
Those are all great points. I think we're going to move on to the next category. And before Dean reads this definition, I think this is going to be the category that has the most difference of opinions, especially on our server. We're going to move on to character creation balance or character balance. Dean, can you give us the definition and where we got it from?
We got that definition from Wikipedia Creation Wiki. And it says character creation, also character generation or character design, is the process of defining a game character or other characters. Typically, a character's individual strengths and weaknesses are represented by a set of statistics. Games with largely fictional settings may include traits such as race and class, and games with more contemporary or narrow settings may limit customization to physical and personality traits. A good character creation system provides enough choices, both positive and negative, to create useful, compelling, and mechanically efficient characters for all manners of roleplay. So, that's the definition. So, I'll start it off with the first question. Is character creation balanced in the Cypher system? Al.
Yeah, honestly, I found it funny to start it with me when Anthony says we're going to have varying opinions on this, because I thought we were going to have similar opinions, but either way.
I meant
even on the server.
Okay. Oh, boy, I was about to be like, whoa, am I going to be under attack right now in my own video about what I'm about to say? But anyways.
I think we might have a difference.
Honestly, yeah. So, honestly, I think character creation is mostly balanced. There's an asterisk there. It's balanced to a degree. There are certain descriptors or focuses that might be a little too strong. One thing that comes to mind, I believe it's I'm blanking on the descriptor at the moment, but it essentially lets you roll for every roll 2 dice and take the higher of the 2. That is a little ridiculous. I forget. I think that's not lucky. I forget. It's one of those weird descriptors that you don't really get many stat bonuses, but that's one of your ability or your enablers. So a couple of things here and there are a little stronger compared to other things within character creation, but for the most part, it's solid. Like, one character isn't stronger than another character. When players make their characters within Cypher System, they can lean whichever way they want. They can go full roleplay heavy, get a lot of training and skills and whatnot, not really many abilities, or they can go full on combat, get a lot of abilities that do damage, etc. And then it's up to the GM to kind of like, this is where that fiat of balance comes in, to create those scenarios that fit the players in their game. But as far as the creation at its base goes, I feel like it's pretty balanced.
I'm going to say it's absolutely not balanced whatsoever, but who cares? That's my... Cypher System isn't... I think a lot of people harp on balance because they come from systems where you get a race, a class, and then you get abilities based on race and class, right? So you tier up. You get a certain armor class. You get certain hit points. That certain weapons do certain damage. And Cypher System and Numenera, they work on the core of the mechanic is your focus, right? And your focus is essentially is your one job you do well. People choose depending on what kind of character concept is way more important in character creation and Cypher System than it is in those D20 based games, right? Those D20 based games, you come up with a concept and you automatically get mechanical benefits by picking a race and a class anyway. In Cypher System, you come up with a concept and you might only get the stuff that comes with your concept. So if you want to be the doesn't do much guy, is that balance? No, because you're not helpful in a lot of avenues of the game. But once again, I'm going to go back to who cares. Cypher System is a narrative-based game. The story is the most important aspect. So is it balance? Are there some foci way better than others? Yes. And if, as a GM, if that really bothers you, eliminate those foci or eliminate the foci that you don't think are useful at all. I do not, when somebody says, oh, the character creation is in balance, I always reply, yeah, you're right, it isn't. But who cares?
I will jump in and say, actually, it is balanced. It's quite balanced. It's your job as the GM, like you were just talking about. Have the right foci in your game for whatever game you're trying to run, number one. But if you look at Cypher on a purely statistical, mechanical basis, every character starts out with 28 pool points distributed amongst their 3 primary abilities. Everybody gets 6 additional pool points to place where they want. You pick your descriptor. Your descriptor either is going to come with some skills or it's going to come with 2 to 4 point bonuses on a particular statistic or a particular pool. The only thing that shifts those ideas and idioms as far as the character being built is the focus. And that focus is your concept, is what you thought about. So if you thought about a guy who doesn't do much, you weren't really trying to be in the midst of things anyway. You were definitely building a social character. So that social character and a character who doesn't do much, if you look at some of the abilities they get, I love that focus. Al loves that focus. Yes, you would.
I was just saying it's so good. I was mouthing it's so good.
It is a balance.
But what I'm saying is,
it is a balance. I mean, you could put a bow tie on a pig. It doesn't make him Prince Charming.
Yo, all right. Let me.
But Anthony, by mechanics, by mechanical numbers alone, it is. And the only thing that offsets it is a focus. And like I said, even let me fit the real, and then it's on you, Al. I just wanted to say, even with that focus, like I'm saying, no, the character that doesn't do much, but he is a social freaking god.
All right, let's go back to the definition of character creation balance. So I just want to prove my point. Is a good character creation system provides enough choices, both positive and negative, to create useful, compelling, and mechanically efficient characters for all manners of roleplay.
Right? Let me chime in here for a second, guys. So, firstly, let me address.
And that's what the argument would be.
Yeah, no, but firstly, let me address what Dean was saying about like how the numbers per descriptor or type or whatever all balance or whatever have you. There are some descriptors like if you don't look at the word like because we all think about the flavoring of the word when we pick a character like mad, lucky, whatever have you. We think about those words, right? If you don't think about those words and strictly look at the numbers and the benefits you get from picking a certain descriptor, there are some that are wildly better than other ones. Like you get plus 4 points, you get abilities, blah blah blah. Like the one that you roll 2 dice every time. Like that's amazing.
I don't know what that is.
I forget which but either way.
No, there's 100% right now. 100%.
That's besides the point.
Yeah.
what you call it, like that is like, again, it doesn't make a huge difference in Cypher System because balance is kind of a moot point when it comes to that kind of regards. But to piggyback off what you were saying, like your argument that a mechanically efficient character doesn't do much, doesn't fit that bill, right? Within the scope of Cypher System, right, you might be right, like in another system, right, like in D&D, where
no, but you have to base you can't you have to base balance, right? Like I don't want it to perceive to say that like I'm trying to say that Cypher System's character creation stinks. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I'm being honest with the definition, right? The definition of a balanced character creation is that you could create characters that are useful throughout the board. Cypher System is not designed that way. Cypher System is designed with narrative first. That's all I'm trying. I'm not trying to say it's a bad thing. You understand what I'm saying?
Let me finish my point here, right? So, within the scope of like you want to be good across the board, right? Like you want to be mechanically efficient across the board, right? So it doesn't do much, right? Again, with that, you're harping on that focus for some reason. I guess
no, it was just a focus I mentioned. I can tell you
there's a whole bunch that only give you a couple of like skill trainings, and that's about it, right?
And not only that. Once again, it's balanced across all manners of role playing. I could take in hunts the weak. I mean, defends the weak, where it doesn't give you anything other than combat. So you're not balanced throughout all. You're not efficient in all manners of role playing.
Again,
let me stop you real quick. If you're saying that, you can look at any game and it's not like that. D&D is combat focused. Their characters are not equal across all manners of role play. I'm in the point.
All right. The way to go back to this argument, because I feel like you guys have your Cypher fan lenses on and don't want to.
No. I had a counterpoint, but I wanted to let Dean. So my counterpoint is you're focusing more on, ironically, the focus, right?
Which is the most important.
Yeah, it is very important. Yes, don't get me wrong. But the way when I create a character, right, and again, if you want your character, again, you can make a character that is mechanically inefficient across the board. Yeah, you can 100% make a character that is only good at talking to people, and that's it. Like you
once crap again, at combat, that's not a bad thing. And it's not narrative. It's narrative based.
It's not a bad thing at all.
I make that all the time.
But on the flip side, if you're trying, you can definitely make a character that is mechanically efficient across the board. It's just up to you as the player to pick the right options when it comes to like your type and your descriptor. There are some descriptors and some types that give you the things that your focus would be lacking. So your focus might be that RP heavy thing. That's when you try to get your combat stuff from your type and your descriptor. If that makes sense.
Yeah, but does that make sense narratively?
I mean, narratively, you can make it make sense. That's up to the player again make it make sense for the character they're creating.
All right, I'll just leave it at this example. If you took something like, you take the most non-min-max character in 5e or Pathfinder, you are playing the gnome barbarian, what you call it, you still gonna have at least, because in the system itself, it's designed to make, the system itself is designed without the narrative in mind. It's designed for efficiency of character. So when you take the most unmin-maxed character, the most least efficient combination you can, they still be able to do one or two things, outside of its comfort zone. Now, if you took the most least efficient, like how Al is suggesting, the brave warrior who doesn't, because we want three different spectrums. The clumsy warrior
who doesn't do much.
No, doesn't do much, and clumsy would be similar. So we have to do, like you separated across. You're gonna come up with a jumble mess that not only is it ineffective, it doesn't make sense narratively.
and that's not. You see, part of me, I would have to argue say that's not necessarily true. Because if you're playing a comedy game, it might actually be.
Yeah, but now you're giving me hypotheticals. We just say period.
All right.
I can say that about anything.
Stop.
You know what I mean?
Stop for just a minute. Because you have to say that because Cypher System is a universal role-playing system. So we have to still focus on what those characters are going to be doing, what is the genre they're going to be in. Because if you look at D&D, D&D is a fantasy game. That's its genre. And that's why.
So let's just do Numenera then.
No. I kind of see what Anthony's getting at with his point here about the mechanical consistency and efficiencies, right? So with D&D or whatever have you, it's baked into character creation that all these things that your character can do or whatever have you, it's all there, right? You might be bad at it, but you can do it, right? Whatever. Yeah. In Cypher System, you have to try really hard to do this, but you can create a character who's ineffective at like it's basically a character that's like Anthony put it, a jumbled mess of like abilities and inabilities like cancel each other out and like if you don't look at it too carefully, your character can end up effectively not really able to do anything. Like and again, it's really hard to do that. You would have to do it on purpose, but it's possible.
And my point would be, it wouldn't make sense.
Again, let me say this: and you could do the same thing. You could do the same thing in a game like 5e. You could do the same thing because you could give your character like with point buy system, you could give everybody.
Here's where I say you'd be more effective because in 5e you have a thing called proficiency that's built in to create balance.
Wait a minute.
Character creation. The proficiency mechanic is designed to make the least maximum.
But even in that, in Cypher System, there's a mechanic baked in to give characters that to it. It's called edge and effort. No matter how you cut it, they still got edge and effort. They still got an edge and effort in something. If he's a warrior, he's got 4 abilities that come from the warrior type that he's proficient in, that he's good at. That's what he does. He might be a Lumos. He could be uncoordinated.
You argue one thing. The question is whether or not character creation is balanced.
No,
I'm a whole type that it isn't, but I don't care. I'm a whole type that it isn't. I don't care that it isn't because in narrative games, balance isn't important.
But no, it's not. It's not important. But the point is, it actually is. That's one of the aspects. That's one of the pieces of the current.
I mean, we can agree to disagree, Dean. But
I think we're gonna go back and forth on this a little too much, guys. So let's ask one final question about character creation here, guys. Is there anything you would like to see differently about the character creation done in Cypher System?
Yeah.
And it is?
We've talked about this before. It's just edge and effort and the description of the way it's presented. I think that causes a whole lot of headache. You know, first of all, edge and effort sound a lot alike. The fact that edge is a numerical representation that people talk about losing portions of their edge or I didn't get to use it all. I think that just is. I think that's kind of a mess. I think that's really problematic because I think I understand what they were trying to say when they said edge, but I don't think everybody else, or I won't say everybody, so I think a lot of people kind of missed the boat. That's just me.
I think the one thing that I really wanted changed was actually changed in the revised core rulebook, and it's how you could swap abilities. And now how they broke it down into categories, how it's laid out. So I think that was my biggest gripe, and I think they actually in the Cypher Core rulebook they did a phenomenal job with that. So like you have more options of fleshing out how your character is narratively, and what you call it. I think that's that was my biggest gripe, and once they took care of that, I really don't have a problem whether it's balanced or not. It doesn't matter to me. I don't I'm trying to tell a story and I'm just creating the character that I want to play.
So for me, it was like Anthony, right? The character creation in the original Cypher Core felt like really rigid. Like there was, I mean, you of course with the creative GM, you can always say, hey, we're gonna swap out this ability from this, focus and give you this or whatever. Like you can still do that. Cypher Revised Core fixed that a ton. Like now it's like all listed out. They got levels for the ability or power levels, so you can kind of decide what's a good level to swap out an ability for someone's focus, make a custom focus. It's all very well laid out, right? And on top of that, and this is where we're getting to my complaint or my, I guess, something I would like to see a little more differently, is that within the the staple focus and foci in the book, I think it's tier 3. You can choose between 2 abilities now, right? You get to choose one or the other, and then you kind of have that option instead of having that list of just the 5 that you get at tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, or whatever. At tier 3 or to tier 4, I forget. You get you get to choose one or the other, and it kind of gives you that focus a little bit more of a personal flavor, right? That was awesome too, because again that was another big complaint that all these are just the same. Like if 2 people are playing the same focus, they're going to be exactly the same. Like what's the point of playing the same focus in the game? That kind of fixed that, especially with the way the power levels of the abilities are listed, so you can easily swap an ability for another. My thing is, if you don't want to go through the trouble of swapping an ability for an appropriate one from the list, it would be nice to see that that level, like when you get to choose something, a little more fleshed out, right? Where there's certain trees now for the focus, right? Where that branches out and now it completely changes the oncoming abilities, right? So that thing branches out and now that choice you make adjusts the ones in the future, whereas where it is now, even after you choose your things at 3 and 4 or at level 3, at 4, 5, and 6 is the same. Like
3 and 6 are the choices.
Oh yeah, 3 and 6. There we go. It's 3 and 6. You get 2 choices. So 2 choices. That's pretty nice. I would like to see something a little more in depth in that field, where the focuses can still like you can have 4 people with the same focus at the table. And again, it's possible now. I would just like to see something more baked into the actual default rules, whereas you're not looking at a list and trying to swap it out, and just to give it a little more flavor per focus. Again, it's easy enough to do that on your own. Just from looking as a player side, I feel like it'd be more enticing for more let's say you're sitting at a table, one person has one focus and something focus you really want to play. Now suddenly you don't want to play it because your characters are gonna be a little too similar. Again, it'd be easy enough to flavor it by adjusting the focus from the abilities from the list. But with a baked-in thing where it's like, hey, now I'm going to go down, like, the frost tree or whatever, and you're going down the fire tree, and now we're completely different down the same focus. That would be nice, but again, not really necessary. It would be nice, though.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
That's a great supplement for you to design out.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe. But yeah.
That would be a great supplement. I could actually see that, it'd just be like from tier 3, these are the branches that, if you choose this, you go this way. If you choose that, you go that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something I've considered for custom foci. It's just that again, I can see why doing it their way is a little easier because, again, you can just look at a list and pick what you want. It's a little less work than putting together specific lists for each focus. But again, it would be nice to have that specific list.
I think that's a great idea. I also think, though, it would add maybe about 20
pages. Yeah, so yeah, it would make the book much thicker, yeah. That's probably another reason they chose not to do something like that, which again is understandable.
Yeah. All right, so you guys ready to go into the last category on balance?
Sure.
And this is a narrative balance. And I got this from Enwell's article, The Definitions of Balance. And I don't believe I got it from the actual article itself. I got it from one of the comments because I thought it was a good definition. And its narrative balance only means that rewards are largely related to the risk and effort needed to win them. All players are capable of contributing to the success of an adventure, and the rules of the game are fair and satisfying to all involved.
Okay.
So is balance important in the narrative of Cypher System and GMing?
Absolutely.
You wanna?
Yeah, Larry just absolutely, and he stays quiet.
want to elaborate on that?
I mean, yeah. You know what? I think because Cypher System encourages the story, that's first and foremost. I mean, even like when you looked at Numenera was all about discovery. It encouraged you down a specific path, and as it moved forward into the Strange and other games, Gods of the Fall, all of them had their interesting little nuance. So, but yet still the same type of awards were given at the end of every session. 2 to 4 XP are given out. The same type of things are given out throughout the game, as far as GM intrusions and how you handle your GM intrusions and so on and so forth. It is up to you as a GM, of course, to make sure you give every player an option of an intrusion, but the rewards, to everybody who's involved are very much similar and very much, I think the reward is a great story and everybody gets to be a part of it. So yes, I'd say absolutely it is.
And,
you want to go
yeah, the awesome thing with Cypher System is that because of the loose nature of, again, how we always saying it's modular, you can assign difficulty numbers on the fly, blah blah blah. So it's really easy for the GM to cater to narrative, or not cater to narrative. Maybe that's a bad phrasing, but like set up scenarios so that everybody has their time to shine. The mechanics don't limit that in any capacity whatsoever. The only issue arises, like we stated earlier, in that inconsistency in how it might be run from table to table. But at the end of the day, Cypher System provides you with the tools to give everybody, every player at your table, no matter how they design their character, whether it be combat heavy, social heavy, a mix of the two. Cypher System provides you the narrative tools to let them all have a time to shine. And on top of that, throw in the fact that there's player intrusions, and just that mechanic alone adds a ton to that whole narrative balance, where, again, some GMs might not feel comfortable with that, like having the players have that much, say in the world. But personally, I think it's awesome that they get that say in the narrative just as much as the GM. Within reason.
Here's the one that I'm actually going to agree with you guys on this one. Here's where I think balance plays a key part in Cypher System. In the other two aspects, I'm not so sure about. I think Cypher System is more in line with old school games where balance wasn't as important. But here's where Cypher System shines when it comes to balance. Narratively, the Cypher System inherently itself, the core system itself, has so many tools designed for the GM to balance out their story and narrative, to make sure even those unbalanced characters are able to still participate in the narrative. Because at its core, Cypher System is not a combat game. It's not a discovery game. It's a story game. At its core, it's a little bit of everything. It doesn't focus on one thing. It focuses on like 5 or 6 things and allows you as the GM to branch your story off in any direction you want to go. And with player intrusions, with GM intrusions, with XP, with effort and edge, it allows characters to be able to fit into any part of the narrative. So when it comes to narrative balance, Cypher System is more balanced than many games out there. I think it makes up for its lack of balance in the other two categories more than anything when it comes to narrative balance. Narrative balance, it is probably the most balanced game I've ever played.
That's actually an excellent point. I never thought about that, where even characters that are functionally, quote unquote broken, even if you did it on purpose, with the mechanics of effort and edge, just inherently they can still participate in things they'd normally be terrible or could not do. Just by spending a level of effort, it something they have an inability at now is just a normal roll. And again, it really allows players or characters to not shine but still participate in moments they otherwise wouldn't be able to. And that's an excellent point. I never really thought about that.
They don't even
And,
necessarily have to shine. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dean.
all I'm gonna just say is, but you just said that. See, just what I was been saying. That's why character creation is balanced. But that's a whole nother story.
Yeah, that's not what I said. What I said is it's so, even with it being unbalanced,
You basically
narrative.
but you said narratively. I get it. But
Okay,
effort and
which are
edge.
two different categories, Dean.
They're two different categories, but you just brought up the mechanics. Effort and edge were the mechanics that
That
allow
was
them to
okay,
work.
Dean. All right. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. So what really what it boils down to is that how balanced the narrative mechanics flow and all the tools that provide you completely make up for the unbalanced nature of the character creation of the other aspect that I'm blanking on right now.
Thank you, Al. That was the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, that's just put it like elegantly. It's just that's really what it is.
I get
And again, it really goes to show you how great that narrative, balance is, because you can have these functionally broken characters or characters that aren't the strongest at whatever might be happening in the moment, but they're still able to participate in the moments with the inherent mechanics of effort, edge, etc. Or even ciphers if you want to throw those in there.
Yeah.
Ciphers are a whole nother thing that like change up balance in another way in and of themselves. And that's another thing that's again awesome because
even if it balances or it doesn't balance, it doesn't matter. Like that, my whole point of why I personally I think balance is overrated. Like I think this whole concept of if something balanced, life isn't balanced to begin with. The greatest stories ever told are not balanced with every protagonist and antagonist in the story. It doesn't matter. The narrative is the most important thing. But Cypher System gives you the tools as a GM to be able to incorporate every character, no matter how impactful they are in combat or impactful they are in social situations, to involve them with the tools that you're inherently given within the rule set. And yes, effort and edge are something, but effort and edge is a narrative tool, right? It's a tool for the characters to impact the story narratively, right? GMIs, or what you call it, player intrusions, those all affect a character's involvement in the narrative. That's why I think it's the most balanced system, and why I love Cypher System is because of its narrative balance.
And that's just an awesome way to put it, because you just like it's balance becomes such a moot point where players can create whatever, literally anything they want. And that's what I tell people when I like try to entice them to play Cypher System. I'm like, have you heard about Dungeons and Dragons where you play like that fantasy and like you're like a paladin or whatever? It's like, you want to do that, but you could be anything you want in any world you want. And they're like, oh, tell me more. Like just that freedom to create anything, right? You as the GM could say, hey player, make anything you want. Like, look at this book, pick any 3 choices for your character sentence, whatever, like pick anything, make it however you want. You as a GM have complete control over how that character has a narrative impact with all the tools given to you as the GM with GMIs, player intrusions. The players can spend EXP on short-term benefits, long-term benefits, where these are narrative things. They might not get a mechanical bonus to the character or, a special equipment or something, but they spend 3 EXP, now they have a trade base. Like, that's a narrative thing, and like it I don't know where I'm going with the point. It's just
but even like what you brought with ciphers as a GM, you have a party that isn't well equipped to handle social situations. You could give them subtle ciphers that allow them to be better at social situations. Right? Once again, it's something the GM could do to handle the way the story, to even the playing field for the players in the story.
Yep.
Or vice versa. They're not good at combat situations. You give them combat related ciphers.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the awesome nature of the Cypher system when it comes to running it. It's so easy to look at a group of players, no matter what their focus might be, what their character is trying to, what they're trying to portray through their character. It's so easy to set up scenarios where they're all having able to a moment to shine through their characters. And it's just splendid to see like the smooth flow of everything through these narrative mechanics.
Good stuff.
I think all in all, I think we didn't necessarily all totally agree, but I think we can all agree that the system itself is a great system.
Oh, absolutely.
And me personally, I think my final thoughts is I don't care about balance. I think balance is overrated. I think good stories are paramount, and that's what you should focus on.
Final thoughts from me would basically be that, yeah, I've never been a big fan of the whole necessity for game balance. I mean, all the best, like you said, the best stories you read, there is no balance. I mean, come on, if you read Lord of the Rings, Sauron totally outranked everybody he was dealing with, until factors.
I mean, you could even go. It's imbalanced in every aspect. If you go to character creation, not one of those guys was. You gonna tell me that somebody really wanted to play? What's that? One of the non-Frodo. I mean, the non-Frodo hobbits.
Pippin,
Yeah.
Pippin or Samwise, or yeah. But that's what I'm saying, and that's the whole point, though. But it was a great story. It had a great narrative. It had those aspects that bring you in. And for me, I think, whether we agree that character creation or anything, or whatever we disagreed upon, has nothing to do with the fact that we agree that the system allows us to tell the stories we want to tell. And
that's 100% right.
And
we agree on something.
We agree on lots of things.
If we don't disagree, first of all, I wouldn't be able to go to sleep at night if me and Dean agreed on everything. That's part of the reason why I love Dean, is because me and him disagree on a lot of things. But
what?
Common ground is that.
It's not even. And again, I don't even think so much of disagreements, Anthony. I see it more. I just see it it's a visual thing. It's a perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, because I get where you're coming from, but I just see how things plug in, and that's kind of my gift. It plugs in a certain way for me. I love that about you. I love that about Al, because you guys always give me more ways to visualize, and it helps me refine my ability to tell those stories and refine my ability to, explain stuff as well. So it's wonderful. Cypher System is the bee's knees as far as game systems is concerned. That's my opinion. See what I'm saying here? That's what we say. That's it. Yeah. So, and that's right. Just so you know, people, you can get some of this pretty merch. You look as good as we do. Yeah.
But either way, my final thought here is actually I came to into recording this video not under the impression, but the thought that basically everything about the system is balanced, quote unquote. Like, as far as like traditional thinking of the word, it is balanced, right? But after our discussion, I realized what Anthony's saying is actually pretty accurate. The character creation process, like I forget what the first thing is now, I'm blanking. The game design, like, a little unbalanced, right? But that's fine, right? Because the narrative portion of it kind of balances it all out in the end. So when I came into this video, I was thinking that every portion of it was balanced, but it's really the narrative that controls all the balance of the other aspects, and that's a perspective I didn't have before this. in my eyes, it was all just, players can do what they want. That makes it balanced. Really, what that means is unbalanced because people can make broken things or whatever have you. But with that narrative control, that really is what reigns in that what you call balance. And yeah, that's really my takeaway from all this was that it in the end it doesn't fully matter as long as the narrative flow is still there and everyone is having fun. And Cypher System gives you all the tools to keep the fun and the narrative going. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
Dean,
yeah.
you want to close us out?
Yeah, so I hope you enjoyed our video tonight, everyone. You got again, Josh. Thank you for spurring an argument between me and Anthony on screen. Nothing unusual. Al, thank you for being the level-headed one that keeps us in path and everything. And
First of all, I only argue with my older brother because I admire him so much, and I want to be half the GM and writer he is one day. So I'll just throw that out there.
And I'll only say that I argue with my younger brother because he on my toes. He makes me realize that there are more than just my what goes on up here. I really appreciate that from both these guys.
And I'll just say that I'm the even-headed or opinion flat one because I don't have much experience in any of this. So I just say what makes the most logical sense in the moment.
So that was our video tonight. Again, thanks again, Josh, Count Zero on the server. And, be sure, people to like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff.
And if speaking of like, share, subscribe, if you like our videos and you like what we do and you want to support us in any way, once again, like we say in all our videos, you don't have to support us financially in any way, but if you find it in the kindness of your heart and you want to support Cypher Unlimited, we do have a Ko-fi set up where you can give us a small little donation that goes a long way for us making our videos, just paying for regular services like Zoom and stuff like that. Or you could visit our online store and get this cool merch that we have. All this Cypher look really cool. Cypher Limited, the links are down below. And of course, like Dean said, please like, share, and subscribe on all our videos and hit that little notification bell. It'll notify you when we have new videos are up. And believe it or not, it really helps us out when you like and share our videos and subscribe, because the more people subscribe to our videos, the more people are going to be aware of it on YouTube, and it just helps build our audience. So we really appreciate if you could do any of those things, and we love you guys.
Yeah, most definitely. And as usual, thank you all so much for watching. It's been a blast as usual. Didn't expect us to have as much of a heated discussion about some of these topics as I was, as what actually happened, but it was very good talk. We got to see a lot of good perspectives. Even myself, like, my perspective has changed from the beginning of the video to the end of the video. Like, I completely see the balancing issue in a different light. Yeah, that's why we do these, to open people's perspectives, and minds to certain things that they might not have been too aware of before, and hopefully we accomplish that goal with this video. Hopefully you guys will go forward and not really be too worried about balance and just have fun with your games, because that's really what the point is of all of this, is to have fun. And yeah, from us at the CU, we will see you all later.